Welcome to Sober Sunrise, a podcast bringing you AA speaker meetings with stories of experience, strength, and hope from around the world. We bring you several new speakers weekly, so be sure to subscribe. We hope to always remain an ad-free podcast, so if you'd like to help us remain self-supporting, please visit our website at sober-sunrise.com. Whether you join us in the morning or at night, there's nothing better than a sober sunrise. We hope that you enjoy today's speaker.
My name is Don Koas, and I'm from the Mohican Nation. And I'm from the Coyote clan on my father's side and the Turtle clan on my mother's side. And in our culture, whenever you introduce yourself, that's who you're supposed to say. Always tie yourself to your people. But my name is Don C. I'm an alcoholic. And so I'm really, really honored to be here and to talk about some of the things, some experiences about the steps. And maybe I'll tell you this joke I heard the other day first. Is I was told that up in South Dakota by the reservation there's this one road it travels, they said, right along the border. And on a reservation, so it's white land on one side, reservation land on the other side. And they say there's a little town there, and when the cars come through there, they have to slow down for that town. So when the cars slow down, and those dogs start chasing those cars. So on one side of that road, Indian dogs, that's where they stay. And the other side of the road is those white dogs. And so when those cars slow down like that, they said those Indian dogs, when they go chasing that car, they go, yeah! And they just bark like that, you know, and that car goes behind. But on the other side of the road where the white dogs are, when they chase that car, they go, bow wow, bow wow, bow wow. So then after a little while, they were chasing these cars, these Indian dogs, you know, and these other dogs, bow wow, bow wow, bow wow. So finally, those white dogs, they come to this Indian dogs, and they said, you know, what are you Indian dogs doing? They said, you make so much noise and stuff. Now, Indian dogs, they said, well, that's just the way Indians are. When we do something, it's all out, you know. That's why we do that. And so those white dogs, they said, that's not how you're supposed to be. He says you're supposed to go bow wow, bow wow, bow wow. And those Indian dogs said, well, I don't know. So the white dogs, they kept talking. Finally, Indian dogs, they said, well, we'll try that. So they went back to that place, and they were waiting there for a long time. And pretty soon this car come along. And slowed down like that, so all they went behind that car with the Indian dogs, you know, they was going, bow wow, bow wow, bow wow, bow wow. And when that car took off, those Indian dogs, they stopped and they looked at one another and they went, eh? Yeah, so we'll do that with bow wow. Bow wow way. Couldn't you see those dogs doing it? Yeah. When you look at the 12 steps, I think right now is a very strong time in Indian communities. And I think contrary to how we look at or have looked at things, I think there's a great healing starting to occur among our people. And in 1991, we met with some elders from the four directions. So we had about 40 elders. They were from North tribes, East tribes, South tribes, West tribes. And so we brought these elders together, and what we asked them to do is to spend some time with us, just talking to us about things. And so in that 4-day conference, they talked to us about the earth and about the environment, but they talked to us about communities, about being Indian men, about being Indian women, things like that, about relationships. They talked about sex, about raising children, everything, for 4 days. And one of the things they did talk to us about, they told us some things about prophecies. And I think for us, the prophecies is very important. They have been told, stories told on over the years. And there was a prophecy, they said that the Indian people, they said, would spend a long time in a real cold winter time of life, a real tough time of turmoil and confusion. And there's a prophecy, it said that when the sun would get blocked in the seventh moon, that would be significant that the winter time is over, that period of time was be over. And then we as Indian people, we would enter into a new springtime, a new time for us as a people. And if you remember, maybe in that July of 1991, there was a big solar eclipse. So we had just accidentally met just about a week and a half after that solar eclipse. So we didn't know these things until they told us that. So they said that eclipse was very significant in that that meant we are now entering a new time. It's a new time for us as Indian people. Then they went on to say, they said for that next 12 moons, they said that a great stirring, that the Creator was going to cause a great stirring to take place. He was going to stir it up. In that time of that great stirring, he said, the elders, they said that there was going to be gifts is going to be given out to the people that we have not used before. And they said that during this time of this stirring, there was going to be a selection of people to help heal all the communities, all the nations. So they said that for the next 12 moons, they said that these people selected, they would go through a real mixed up time for themselves. And like a real evaluation time, kind of, that they would, even that they would think that they were crazy. Like they might have their jobs and be in place doing, have everything in order. But then all of a sudden, you know how you got your rug of life and you have your careers and cars and everything, They said it would be like for certain people that he would come and something would grab the edge of that rug and it would just kind of upset everything. So you'd think you were crazy, really mixed up. And they said that those people selected that they would go through a real personal time, like they have to go through a healing time, that they would need to even their secrets couldn't stay secrets no more. They said they would all surface, they would come up, they would arise. And then they said that that these healers, they would know something was going on. You know how sometimes you have like this urge, you just kind of know you got to go do something. Like in our tribe, there's these teachings called Teachings of the Warrior. And what it says is that everybody is a warrior. That's not like a battle name on television. That's a spiritual being name. And in that teachings, it says that every warrior has a song written in their heart, and that song must be sung before you die, or your soul forever remains restless. And that sometimes we have to go through life school like that. That doesn't mean just like high school or university. It means life school. And many of us know about that darn life school. Pretty tough roads. And at the time we think that that's all bad. But maybe we are just have to do that because now we got other things to do. We need that experience. Now we have to go back and help the people. But we'd never be believable unless we went and tested that, all those things that we needed to learn. And so they said that what would happen is that a great healing would start to occur among our people. And they said a long time ago, they said the Creator came to a place called Turtle Island. And he said to the people, I'm going to divide you into 4 directions, he said. To a red direction, yellow direction, black direction, and a white direction. And he said to each of those directions, I'm going to give you each a certain accountability. There's some things you have to know. And so to the red direction, he said, to you, you are the keepers of the earth. That you have to go through the cycles of time and learn all the things about the earth, about land and about plants, and about how everything is connected. And you're going to be given that knowledge through those times, because a day will come when you have to come and tell people those things that you know. Into the yellow direction, or the yellow race, he made them to be keepers of the air. So they were to learn about breathing and about breath and all of that. And to the black direction, he gave them the responsibility to be keepers of the sacred water. They were to learn all those things about the water. And to the white direction, he said, you are the keepers of the fire. So sometimes in that direction we think about like the light bulb. You know, those guys, you know, everything they do has got like the car, the combustion engine's got like that firepower in the middle. And they said that what the Creator said was that the day would come, he called it the coming together time, that when the springtime would arrive, then we would all need to come together, sit in a circle, and that we would need to start share this knowledge and this wisdom that each one has, because everybody is going to know something about this healing part. Everybody has a part in that. And we, White Bison, we work in a lot of different Native communities around the country. And we are starting to see, wherever we go, we are seeing that the healing is starting to occur among our people. There's even people coming home that they get discontent where they are, and they're coming home to help and make a difference. We're seeing it all over the place, that these circles are starting together. So I just thought I would just share a little bit about that, because I think that when they have like a first conference, Red Road Conference, that's very, very significant, because that's a gathering of these circles is what's going to go. And that we don't need to be so concerned about the numbers, but who is supposed to be here is exactly who is supposed to be here. And that this is good. You get it going, get a seed going, do it again, and make a place for the Native people to come. So is there any questions on that, those prophecies? But it's a very good time for us in the terms of these prophecies. Also, then what we'd like to talk about is a little bit about the steps. When I come into AA, my sobriety birthday is August 10th, 1978. And I had a hard time coming into AA at first. It didn't make no sense to me, but I kept coming back and going drinking again, and coming back and going drinking again. And finally, I guess I drank what I was supposed to drink, you know. And I guess it's because of alcohol. I kept coming back. It wasn't for anything else. But on my journey to get here, I lost, like some others, everything. I lost family, respect. All of those things went. But it always had a hard time, even like with a big book. They say the instructions are in that book, and I would look for those instructions, and I could never, ever see them. I couldn't figure out, what they were talking about. So I managed to get a sponsor, and that sponsor helped a lot. And so as I got sober for a couple years, then I happened to, even though I was sober for a couple years, I always felt something was missing. There was just something not right. But then I was kind of used to that anyway, so it wasn't like it was a surprise. So then as things progressed, I happened to run into one of our elders who also is in recovery, and it was then he said, you have to go back to the culture. He says, you never know who you are unless you go back to that culture. Because I had left it. Even though I was raised, by my grandfather and stuff, and it was done in a good way. So then I went back there and started to look at the culture. Then I started to see that the program and the steps, they were the culture and the program, it was kind of the same thing, but just said different ways. And I'll just make this remark because, and maybe someday I'll change my mind, but I'll just say kind of what I see right now, and not everybody agrees with this, but that's okay too. But when I look at myself as an Indian person in recovery, and then talking to some other people, what I found out was, and I'm saying this with the highest respect that I can say, I always respect the AA. It's the best program for the alcoholics that's on the whole earth. But one of the things, I think there's a thing in a big book, it talks about that sometimes maybe the Creator will reveal more when we're ready. So one thing I like about that big book, it doesn't say you have to do nothing. I guess that's why it was attractive to me, because I didn't like have-tos, but it's suggested steps, and it's got a real good way of not saying certain things, like at first. But in a way, what I found out was when you look at the design of how the program got designed and everything, it was kind of designed by white middle class males. And I'm saying this with respect, I want to say that, but like when I come to meetings or they say work these steps, in my mind wasn't the things I couldn't hook into what they were saying a lot of times, about Titanics and all this other stuff. I had a hard time looking at that. And so what I started to see was that when you add some of the culture to it, then all of a sudden it would start to make more sense to me. So it's the same thing, but looking at it kind of a different way. I think sometimes I see women struggle, because a lot of the steps is written like about power and ego and, really strong control things. And like where I was raised, I wasn't raised to think like a lot of that way. So when I was looking at unmanageability and stuff, I couldn't quite grasp that. So what we want to share today is maybe just a combination of all of that stuff, my experiences with that, and maybe looking at it from an Indian way, to look at it that way. So one of the things I found is when we look at the steps in the kind of how Indian people look at things is in a circle. We know that the Creator made a way, and everything, they say, travels in a circle. The earth is round, the sun goes around, the moon goes around. You have seasons, spring, summer, fall, winter. You have cycle of life, baby, youth, adult, elder. Everything goes in a circle. So when we started to look at the steps and using that circle, what we found out that you could do the same thing but do it just in a different way. So it's just like the circle. It's sort of like looking at the earth. The sun rises in the east, it sets in the west. Then there's that, when the sun is up during the day, that's the growing time. And then in the north is like the winter, where old man winter in the wisdom is. So as we started to look at this, we found out if we put steps 1, 2, and 3 in the east, that is like the direction of the sun, then those steps, that direction, when you face that new light, new life, well, to that direction, that is about finding God or the Creator or Great Spirit, higher power. So that's steps 1, 2, and 3 is in the east, and that's about finding a relationship with the Creator. Then steps 4, 5, and 6, that's in the south, and that's a direction about finding a relationship with yourself. So then, even like we found, as we share a little bit later, when we work the steps, when you do the work on them, you face that way. You work steps 1, 2, and 3. Whenever you sit at the table or wherever you are, you face in the east, because there's powers that we all know come from that. Then when you turn to the south, that's steps 4, 5, and 6, that's about finding yourself, a relationship with you, the inventory steps. And then steps 7, 8, and 9, that is in the west. That's that forgiveness direction, like the sun going over the horizon, the letting go, that direction. And that is about finding a relationship with others. That's where you establish a relationship with your brothers and sisters. And then steps 10, 11, and 12, that's in the north. And that's that direction of the elders. That's where the wisdom in that direction comes. So we started to see that when we looked at that going in a circle, then you'd see it's not like a straight line, where you go down a page and then you say, well, what? And I think the other thing that used to baffle me at first when I got a sponsor and I got in the steps, it was, it's like they just say, the steps are in order. See, do step 1. Well, what does these other things mean? Don't worry about that. Do step 1. You'll know. Go to meetings, do all that, and they'd listen. And so I always look forward to the steps with fear. I just, inside of myself was a resistance. It's like, you knew what dollar it says, turn your life over to this carrot, you see, I don't understand that. Why would I want to do that? That doesn't, see, so it was always like a resistance. And it always baffled me that it seemed tone was to work the steps through fear. And a lot of that was just my own tapes, like when I was in the boarding schools or the mission schools, It was always like they always painted a picture of, like they would teach you about God or whatever. So it seemed like one of the ways they would always do, like some of the teachers or parochial schools or whatever, it was always like they'd paint a picture of hell. That's how they motivated you to seek God. So they'd say, you ever been burnt by a match or a fire? And you go, yeah, I have. So, well, your whole body is going to burn. All over, just blisters. You're going to be away forever. See? Then they would say things like, you ever been thirsty? So out in the woods all day, no water? I say, yeah, ain't no water in hell. Your tongue gets big and your body's going to be all blistered. Now you want to see God. And you say, well, yeah, I do. Right? So it was like you always had like the flames of hell licking your ass, you see, to see God. And so there's always this resistance, but kind of the way, that I grew up. It wasn't a positive experience. I didn't see God because it was good or like the culture. It was always the flames of hell, see, kind of licking your way there. And so there's always a resistance, to these steps. Even though when I come in, I was ready, you see, to do them. But then as I saw later on, there's other ways to look at things. And the elders, they tell us, they say there's always 2 points of view of the world. They say one point of view of the world is a point of view of the mouse. The mouse, you see. So the mouse gets up in the morning and all the grass is bigger than the mouse. Every rock is big. Every gully is, everything is an obstacle. So that mouse goes along, see. Oh my God, ain't this awful? Oh, look at this. The grass is tall. Look at the rock. Oh, this big valley. I'm just not going to make it. It's going to be a real bad day. See. Well, at the same time, there's a point of view of the eagle. So the eagle is flying up there looking at the same thing the mouse is looking at. And it's looking down at that mouse. It says, Mouse, why are you so worried? Lighten up, mouse, Don't take it so serious. So there's always 2 points of view, you see, for everything. And so we want to kind of spend some time looking at things from 2 points of view. Now looking at also about the steps is, we found this in what always makes me comfortable. Indians always learn the best when they know the whole first. Show that big picture first, and then you can go work the parts. But if you just show a little part and you can't see the whole, then you tend to want to resist. So I used to wonder, I say, why is there always, you hear people say, I'm stuck in this step, I'm afraid of this one, and I can't do this, and inventory is negative, and this is, there's always like and I says, it seems strange to me that the Creator would give a program to recovering people and then make it a fear program. I said, it doesn't make sense that He would do that. You see, that maybe there's another point of view. Maybe that's a point of view of the mouse. Maybe there's another point of view of how to look at this. Is it possible to come in and work the steps and look forward to them? That you anticipate doing the next one instead of looking at the resistance, of it all. So, as we continue to go back to the culture and learn some of those things, and I found that there was other ways to look at the steps and that recovery, and to look at it from a Native point of view just started to really make sense to me. See, I'm not afraid of the steps at all today. There are places in there, where things go on, but I always look forward to making that change. So what we'll be using a lot in this morning is we will be talking about these steps from a medicine wheel point of view, from the circle point of view. So pretty much it's like Sam read, we'll be looking at some of the prophecies, some of the medicine wheels, a cycle of life. And in doing that with an intent of sharing some information that will allow one to look forward to working those steps. And then we'll look at an overview of the steps, and then we'll spend primarily the late morning and the afternoon doing a lot of workshops. Also for those, we will try to take breaks about every 45 minutes. I believe in taking frequent breaks. So we're not going to be set in here. And if there are any questions as we go through this, please feel free to just raise your hand, or whatever is your customary way of signifying that you have a question to ask. Derek, could you hand out those workbooks too? Also, we'll give you a workbook, and then we'll explain that, kind of go through that workbook so we're kind of familiar with that also. But in looking at these steps, what I want to kind of do is tell you a story about something that happened to me when I was 4 years sober, because it's very important, I think, for us to locate. When I come into recovery, I had lost everything and was in debt and lots of things like that. And I managed to get sober, going to AA and getting a sponsor eventually. So over the next, as I come in, the first year was crazy as heck, and then the second year, and then by the time 3 years or so, it was sort of like I did have a rug again, and there was some sanity on that rug. I had a res car with some good tires, and I wasn't moving every month or playing those games and paying my bills, getting responsible again. And so it was going pretty good by the time I was getting 3.5 years sober. But then what happened was I must have been about 4 years sober, and all of a sudden it was just like somebody took that rug again and just upset it all. I was in trouble at work. I was in trouble in my relationship. I hated going to meetings. I set meetings and they just stunk, and my sponsor got stupid, and this book, I had read every damn thing in it, and I didn't want to see this crap again. I didn't want to pray. I couldn't work steps. I didn't want to work them. And I wanted to run. See, I was having a hard time. And I really didn't want to go to meetings. So after a while, I thought, I better go see somebody. So I went to see this one elder in Denver that I used to go see a lot. And so always by the time I see him, then I'm just really scattered and just rambling all over the place. So when I go see him, he sits in the backyard, he'll grab a chunk of wood and he'll whittle with his knife, waiting for me to get done. Just shakes his head like that, And so I got through all what I had to get through, and so then finally he said to me, well, how long are you sober now? Exactly. I said, well, 4 years, and I think it was like a week. And he says, well, you're right on schedule. And you know how you hate to hear that when they say things like, you're right on schedule? But he told me, he said, I want to tell you something about that not a lot of people know. And it's to do with growing and do with cycles. See, everything, he says, goes in cycles. And we all participate in a cycle. Like geese, they know exactly when they're supposed to go this way, how long they're supposed to stay, and then they know exactly when to go back. And everything in the whole earth works by a system of order, that there is an order to everything. But he says very often we, as a human being, we think we're the exception. We always think we're the exception, that everything else participates but not us. But he said, I want to talk to you about the seasons of growing. He says, because this will really help you in the recovery. And he said that every human being, we participate in a 4-year growth cycle. That we have 1 year of spring, 1 year of summer, 1 year of fall, and then 1 year of winter. That there is a cycle that we grow through. So when we grow, it's like you don't grow like there's a there down there. When we go, we travel like this. Spring, summer, fall, winter. We travel in a circle. And every 4 years it takes to make that circle. So I'll just talk about these seasons because I think it's really helps. Because have you ever noticed a lot of times how people seem to get in troubles what years? 4 to 5, 7 to 8, 11 to 12, 15 to 16. 4-year cycles. You see a lot of people will slip. 4 to 5, 7 to 8. A lot of relationship troubles or divorces and stuff take place in sobriety cycles. So we're going to talk about these seasons, but they're not to do with the seasons outside. They're talking about seasons, inside seasons. So we'll look at some information about these and see if these seasons make sense, these seasons of recovery. And then I'll also talk to them about a little bit in terms of like groups, because we have our groups or organizations, whatever. So I'll just kind of talk about both of those, but mostly I'm going to talk about personal growing. So in the spring season, in an organization, you'll see these type of characteristics. Like when something first starts out, even like how this conference started, first one, see? A lot of hope, a lot of energy, a lot of excitement. I wonder who's coming. I wonder if they are going to show up. So you have all these questions when you first start. So at an individual level, you know how like an oak tree, see the oak tree standing out in the forest like that, nothing's going on? Then unknown to the oak tree, that sap, it starts to work its way up into a kind of a form of life. It starts to work its way up inside of that tree. But at first, the oak tree don't know it. So a lot of times we come into recovery at first, you'll notice, other people will notice things before we notice them ourselves. So it's like the oak tree is standing out there, or our friends will come up and they'll say, geez, you look different. What'd you do? Fix your hair different or not? Something? Nah, same old way. I've been wearing it for 10 years. Ain't nothing going on here. See, then a couple of days later, you'll see people will come up and they'll say, you get different clothes or something? Is there something about you seems to be different? Nah, same old rags I've always had. See, ain't nothing going on here. Then maybe a couple days later, a week later or something, they'll kind of kid you. They'll say, what'd you do? Go snag a new man or something? There's something different about you. So the other people will notice a change going on. But usually inside of ourselves we don't. But the day comes when you get up and you walk into the mirror, in the breakfast or whatever, in the bathroom, and all of a sudden you look in your own eye and you know something's going on. You don't have any idea what it is, but you kind of know that it's going on. You're not sure, but you know. So it's like when you look in the mirror and you realize that, see, then what you do is you close the door so nobody's looking, and you look at yourself, really good in that mirror. And then you say, is this like how an oak tree would bud? You get those little buds start to appear on its branches. That's when you notice it. You don't know what's going on, but you're just kind of looking at a mirror and you say, check myself out. I think I'm budding, you know. So you just kind of know things are going on, but you don't know for sure. And most people that get into recovery, you kind of sense that. So then you go through that first year, and if you take a look what happens to that oak tree, all that really happens is those little buds, they break open and things start to turn into young leaves, and the leaves don't have shape yet. But over that first year, a shape starts to form. Little things start to, like attitudes. I start to believe this. I see hope. I get a car. I get a job. I keep it. I quit lying. I'm getting responsible. Just very, very slowly, these little buds start to happen. So we go through that first year, and that's just that budding season. Then we come to the second season. That's called the summer season. And it's during the summer seasons that those buds seem to just kind of solidify. They get the shape that they're supposed to be, and all of them do that. And if you step back and you look at that tree kind of has a shape. Not like it was shaped in the spring, but it kind of has a shape of how that tree is going to be, you see, for that season. So at an individual level, it's sort of like things just kind of solidify. You get a job, and you keep it, see, a few bucks extra in the checkbook or whatever, and you do the checkbook and you balance it, see? Those kind of like responsible things. You tell somebody you're going to be there to make coffee, you get there. You say you're going to be here, you usually do. If you don't, you call. But you start to get some kind of sense of responsibility. So during that second year, it's just kind of a smoothing out place. It just kind of smooths out. So you hear people say, well, that first year was just crazy, and heck, now the work begins. And there's all these little different sayings that we have. So then we come to the end of that second season, or that second year, and it's kind of comfortable. For the most part, it's pretty comfortable. Then we think it can't get any better than this. But then lo and behold, the next season approaches. So the oak tree is standing out there with all its green leaves, and all of a sudden it starts to notice it's turning yellow and orange, and there's fruits and harvest and nuts. And so it's like that third year is usually we talk about like I'm in the groove. Sometimes it's like you can't do anything wrong. Just things start to really fall in place, during that third year of sobriety. And you really, things line up, relationships and all that stuff, they just really line up. So in organizations, you'll see those types of characteristics. Even in AA groups or meetings when they form, that third year usually, things are just really in order, and see everything is happy. So the oak tree is standing out there, see, during its third season. And it's just saying, they have little things like you'll hear, if it's not broke, don't fix it. See, in other words, don't touch anything. I want it to stay this way forever. This is good, see. I have arrived in sobriety, see. Some people said it was going to take 10 years. I did it in 3. See, look at how my life is. But you see, the oak tree is standing out there, and then one day the temperature changes just a little bit, and this gust of wind comes along, goes whoosh, and it blows most of the leaves away. So it's the approach, you see, of that winter season. But the oak tree is saying, no problem, the kid's tough here. So I lose a few leaves, see, not a big deal. So about a week later, the temperature changes just a little bit, and whoosh, the oak tree loses more leaves, and the oak tree is standing out there wondering, what the heck is going on? But it's still saying, I can maintain. See, I've kind of got it together. So then a few more weeks go along. The few remaining leaves that's hanging on the branches of the oak tree, the wind blows those away too. So in a few more days, the oak tree all of a sudden starts to say, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Something's not right here. And it starts to look at the forest, and it sees the forest looks dead. Just a little while before, it was colorful and everything was together. Or it looked like at work, you say, work sucks. It used to be fun to work here, but it's not fun to work here anymore. So it starts to do an examination of its rug of life, and it looks at the relationship, and it says, this relationship used to be fun. We used to do things like he just sits on the TV, watches what we didn't do nothing together. And it's not that great either. Besides, it's just like rut time. And you kind of look at yourself in the mirror, you know, some mornings, like during that beginning of winter season, you go, you know. It's like you start to not to be able to stand yourself. And then you just start to, like, something's wrong, but you don't know what it is. You just sense, like, I must have done something wrong, but you see. And then you go to meetings and you find out meetings suck too. Jesus, these make no sense. You know, I'm supposed to go to these meetings to get something, and that guy there talked 23 minutes. He didn't say anything. That one judged this one, and that one did this. I can't stand those meetings. See, you call up your sponsor, and he's a space case, or she's a space case. They make no sense. You try to read the big book, can't read the big book. Try to pray, you don't feel like praying, not reading. You know it's just lip service. Besides that, it doesn't work. So you see, it's during that winter season, you kind of have withdrawal. You kind of want to, like, be alone. You just, all of a sudden, something seems to not be right. Now, there's a wintertime prayer, and it goes something like this. We say, one morning, we say to the Creator, we say, you know, I know in the big book it says I'm not supposed to pray for myself. But in case you're making an exception, I have a little list I have been thinking about. So here goes, in case you're listening. So I'll put these in a priority, in an order of which I would like them granted, just in case you were willing to make an exception. 1, I would like a cabin in the mountains. 2, I want to go there by myself. Like, yo, man, I know you know I love him. I know it doesn't look like lately that I do, but I really do. But I don't want him along. See, the kids, let him keep them. These kids are just driving me nuts, you know. I can't stand this. I'll take the dog. I'll take a bunch of books to read. I'll take a big pot of a chicken noodle soup with an infinite supply of fried bread. I take no television. I want no television, but I want to go there by myself. I don't want nobody to know where I am. I just want to be alone. So in that winter season, it's a season of withdrawal. That's good. We're supposed to. It's a time of reflection. Now, people will do a lot of dumb things during winter season if they don't know about winter. They will, a lot of times you'll see it's called burnout at work. It's time to move on. See, burnout, what happens? 3 to 4. See? It's time to move on. It used to be fun. Look, these managers here, they just got everything all screwed up. If they just left it alone, it would have been good, but they had to go mess with it. Now everybody's fighting. It's not fun to work here anymore. See, and you look at the relationship, and you just drive you nuts. You don't want to, participate in it, and you feel guilty because you're thinking that way, but it just doesn't seem right. People will leave jobs. They'll go take new jobs during the winter season. So they'll go take a new job, not necessarily because this job is really good and because it'll benefit them. So they'll take the new job to get the heck out of that one. See, so they leave for the wrong reason. They very often move across country, do things you see during that winter season. Many people will leave relationships that didn't need to have been left. Things could have been worked through. Years 4 to 5. The next season, years 7 to 8, 11 to 12, 15 to 16. Many people slip in sobriety, years 4 to 5, 7 to 8, 11 to 12, because of that winter season. See, they do dumb things because all of a sudden it seems like something's wrong, but nothing is wrong. Because you see, during the winter season, there's 3 questions that we lose the answer to. There's 3 questions that we get the answer to when we first go into our spring season. Like in the Indian cultures, our ceremonies, our dances, those culture things that we do are always about putting us in touch with the answer to 3 questions. And that if I know the answer to these 3 questions, I can pretty much take life on its terms. If I know the answers to why am I? See, what is my purpose? Who am I? What is my identity? And where am I going? That I know a direction. So in my mind, will always feel comfortable, grounded, centered, if I know the answer to those 3 questions. Why am I? Who am I? And where am I going? But if I lose the answer to one or more of those 3 questions, then I start to appear to be lost, crazy, insane, if I don't know why I am, if I don't know who I am anymore. See, now, I think it's important for us to know that during that fourth year, like during the fourth year, you work a set of steps different than you do the first three. Right? You always work in harmony with the season. Now, like, how do you know the season that you're in? Well, you see, so you know, am I in spring, am I in fall, am I in summer, or what? It's kind of easy. One way is tomorrow morning when you get up, get a cup of coffee or tea, whatever, and you just sit and think, when was the last time back my life really turned to crap? When did it really go to hell? So if it was 2 years ago, then that's winter. So if it's now, then I'm in spring or I'm in summer, you see. But very often you'll see that these seasons of sobriety are right in sync with when you first came in to a program. That starts out your season when we come into recovery. And these seasons are not necessarily in harmony with the seasons outside. They're in harmony with seasons in here. So it could be winter outside, and you could be in your spring, your personal springtime of growth. Now you take being in a relationship. A relationship also will have a cycle of seasons. So every 4 years, typically a relationship will go through a type of a need for renewal. Because what happens when we look at how do we grow in circles. So we really grow in a direction like this, like in a virtual ring. But what happens is, say we go spring, summer, fall, winter, what happens is we transition to a new orbit. And this is why we appears to be nuts. You see, when we go around our first seasons and we get our leaves, what are our leaves? My new truths, my clarity, what I learned through praying. I know where to go in a big book. I know about acceptance. If this goes wrong, read 449. Sponsors tell us. We go there again, again, and again. And all of a sudden we know when this goes wrong, do this. We start to get it. See, when you get mad, instead of letting your lips move, zip your lips. So you go to the 11th step, pause, ask for the credit for the right thought or action. And when we don't let our lips move against other people, we start to get along with them. It's like we start to get that. But the other way was let the lips move first. So we start to, see, these leaves are these little techniques and these skills that I have learned. And we build this tree of who I am now. Then we develop our way of kind of getting along in life. But what happens is the Creator causes a shift to take place in the unseen world. We shift. So now we're traveling at a different momentum. See, a different speed. Lights up. But at the very center of my being, in the center of the atom system, I'm connected. In the very middle of everything, see, I'm connected. So let's say we put you under that microscope. Focus down, 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 say Jerry. Then we would see that you couldn't tell me from you at that level. It's just a system of atoms that makes up a human being. But at the very center of your system, we are connected like this. At that very center. Now, when we talk about this interconnected system, so that means then you are connected to everyone here. In that same way, we're connected to every plant, every rock, every tree, every bird, every insect. Because they're made up of the same things, but the electrons change. But at the center of all things, we're connected. But then we say, well, so what? You know, like, big deal. Now, have you ever noticed how you can tell when you're not liked? Yeah, see. Have you ever noticed how you can tell when you're not wanted? Have you ever noticed how you can tell when somebody thinks you're dumber than dirt? Have you ever gone into a store as an Indian person and you know you're being watched? I mean, they're really cool. They watch you in that mirror. And you know that they know that they think you're going to go take something. You ever watch that? See? Now, why is that? You see, if my thinking is in harmony with those principal laws and values, where they are is at the very center. That's where they are located. So if my thinking is in harmony, and because we're connected, you'll be able to sense that. But if they're out of harmony, you will sense that too. Now, it's not the words that makes it so. There's something else how we can tell. See, if it was the words that made it so, I would be able to say, I love you. And it'd be so. But let's suppose I said that to you 5 minutes to 1 Saturday night in the country and western bar just before it closed. Right? Well, see. So if I say I love you, true love. See. Haven't we met before? See, we've been together in another lifetime, right? Whatever it is. See. You look like someone I know, don't you? See. So if I have just using the words, but my intent is something else, see, so she might say, what is he after? So if I'm out of spirit and intent because we're connected in the unseen world, you will always pick up spirit and intent. See, if it's in harmony, you will sense it, but if it's out of harmony, you will sense that too. So if somebody doesn't like Indian people, even though they say, oh, see, do you know this? I know this one Indian lives in South Dakota. Do you know him? And they'll give you their name. You know how they do that? See, some of my best friends are Indians. But if they are speaking out of spirit and intent, then you will be able to sense that. See? Or if you are speaking out of spirit and intent, someone will be able to sense that. So a lot of the things we are looking at in the steps is to do with looking at also the unseen world. Where have I been out of spirit and intent? Because if I think that I can, see, sometimes they call it sweet lips training. You know, where I got the stuff and I'm walking around trying to be cool and trying to be not who I am and all this stuff. Other people will pick up on that because I'm out of spirit and intent. They will just sense that. So very often I have lived out of spirit and intent for a long time when I'm drinking. And then there's certain results I get for living out of harmony. See, that's the other road. So the steps is about finding out where that is and letting me come back so that I speak from that place of principles that the steps talks about. We live this principle way of life. So it means I come back to that road and I have to start looking at designing in my mind a way of living in harmony with the unseen world. But very often we're under the delusion I can get away with it if I got good words, but we cannot. Not in relationships, not to one another. See, what step you want? See, you see that? No, you didn't take about 3 weeks to get in the program. The best place to hide is, say, step 4. Especially the old-timers come around. What step you on? 4? They leave you alone. See? Or they'll come in and say, what step you on? Well, I'm between step 2 and 3. How do you get between step 2 and 3? Well, I'm on steps 1, 2, and 3. Or you're a waltzer, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. See, so it's about knowing ourselves and how do we work. So we need to know, the elders said, it's interconnected. You cannot get away with nothing. You can think you can, but you cannot. That there is an unseen world. In the unseen world where we're all connected, you cannot hide. But you will think that you can. So it's about getting right with that. So as we start to look at the steps, see, we look at the whole thing, not just the piece. Everything that we do, you see, is a balance. It's about harmony. Conflict is what will guide us to harmony. Conflict is going to be the friend in the step, not an enemy. Because you experience a conflict, see, many times in our religious training we are taught when there's conflict, you're wrong. See, there's a sin. You sinned. You know, and so when we grow, like the same elder I was talking to you about earlier, when I was about 2 years sober, I went up to him and I said, I had just had it with growing, you know, working steps and praying, doing all this stuff, because I said, you know, trying to walk this red road, man, this is tough. you know. And he said, well, let me show you something. So he took a stick in his backyard and he drew a line on a road, on a ground like that. And he said, now I want you to walk on that road, on that stick, on that line, 1 foot behind the other. So I got on that line like that and I started walking like this, and he was elder, he'd walk right side of me like this, and all of a sudden he gave me a big push. And I go way off this side. He said, get back on that line. So I get back on there. He said, walk. So I walk like that, and then he pushed me this way, and I go way off that line. Get back on that line. So I get back there, so he walked like that. So he just 7, 8 times he pushed me like that. So then he said to me, he said, when you are growing, he said, what it says is you are walking a red road, not a red line. So he took that stick and he drew a line way on each side of where my footprints was. He said, that's how wide the red road is. He said, you're trying to walk a red line. It's a red road. That the mistake is just as sacred as being on track. The mistake is just as sacred. He says, you need to respect your defects, because it is through the defect that you learn the knowledge of the Great Spirit. That's where he talks to you. So he said, don't be criticizing yourself when you make that mistake over there. Because that happened, it's not wrong, sin, guilt, all that stuff. He said, you're really there to look for the correction. Always looking for the correction. So he said, in a way, lighten up. That road that the Creator made for us to walk, the red road, is a big, wide highway. Everything on that road is sacred. That life and growing. See, the Creator made us to learn by trial and error. Everything He made learns. You take a little baby, learns to walk. Right? When they get that age, they hold your fingers like that, and they learn to walk. First thing they do is bam, right down on their butt they go. Make a mistake right away. Now you can imagine the adults, what we do to that little baby, we go, all right, you did it. See, that little kid just, puts his fingers back up and gets back up, smashes his head to the left, right? All right, you did it, to the right, back. Well, all that time they're learning balance and they're learning all that stuff. Then in about 3-4 months, and all of a sudden, see, they're just walking. How did they learn to do that? All by mistakes, by trial and error. And we respect that. But that's how the Creator made us to learn, is by going off track, on track, off track. So we need to respect ourselves. When we come back from our break, we're going to then talk about the medicine wheels, concepts and laws, and how do they fit to steps. Because then they make you want to look forward to doing the steps. So let's take about a 14-minute break. Finding those issues which help us discover that knowledge of the Creator. It is through the defect where we discover that knowledge. That doesn't mean that it's bad or wrong. Now, in the medicine world too, we often talk about the 4 directions of things. So we'll talk about the 4 directions of life: baby, youth, adult, and elder. And that's our directions. That's the way life goes in a circle. But very often when we come into recovery, many of us, there is a place where the medicine wheel is broken. And for many of us, that medicine wheel is broken between the youth and the adult. Because you see, we grow up or whatever, then many of us, we start drinking when we are in the youth. So physically we will grow up. Our bodies will grow, we get married, we have children. But emotionally, we are like teenagers. We don't grow up, we're immature, even though we're older. I remember I first come into recovery, I went through divorce and all that stuff. Then when I finally got to that point, I went in a relationship. I went out with this woman twice, and I found myself going in my jewelry box trying to find my class ring. I wanted to go steady. Hell, I was 33-year-old. They don't even go steady no more, right? But I wanted to go steady. I wanted to pin her, so you show all your buds. She's wearing my ring. Christ, that's, nearly halfway to the coffin, and I'm still, still going this old way. So very often when we come back and we work the steps, it's about growing up. It's about coming back to that place and continuing my growth. Does that make sense? This is broken. It's not good or bad. It's where we stop in the unseen world. So we got to come back there, do some things, and grow up to become mentally healthy and mature. Now, what we're leading up to is, because the steps is to take a look at the human being who is in recovery from a native point of view. Well, let's look at what would it look like for a native person to grow up. Did the Creator make a path of things that we are supposed to experience as we grow up? Is that already in place, or is it just an accident? Or is there something we are supposed to do? So if we look a little bit further at what is it like to grow up as a native person, because if we have an idea about that, then we get into the steps, we look at the steps, or we read the big book from a native point of view. So we want to just take a look at this cycle of life. So we're going to look at that, and then we're going to go and apply just these basic concepts to an approach through the 12 steps from an Indian way of looking at it. Now we're going to talk about these developmental cycles here and about growing up. See, very often we judge one another just based on things that we see about one another. So we look at that one, we say, oh, those Indian men, see, they can't trust, don't talk, don't feel. That's what you hear sometimes about that. Or look at that stone face, or that one don't talk, or this one does that, or see. So we tend to start judging and putting people in categories, but a lot of times we don't know what's really going on inside of a person. Sometimes we don't even know what's going on inside of ourselves. So we want to talk about growing up. Because it seems that the Creator He made a system for us to grow as human beings, to grow up to be mentally healthy. That there's certain things we're supposed to experience, and if we don't experience them, then we will see behavioral differences later on. So we want to talk about that. So when we look at certain things in the steps, we're looking at it with a point of reference that will make sense to us as human beings. So if we take a look at the cycle of life of an Indian person, and this applies, I think, to any human being, but it seems that when a baby is born as a human being, one of the first things it needs to experience is a sense of trust. And this might be from birth to maybe 18 months. That time frame, that child needs to experience a sense of trust. It's a feeling. In other words, that little baby, you see moms, they always hold them every time they cry, and they touch them and carry them, and they do all this stuff, just constantly with them. That's why in a traditional way, they carried them every place they went, right? In a traditional way. They never, the discipline, everything was no matter whether they worked or what they did, they just had that baby hanging on them all the time. Now what happens, see, because there's two roads. Let's supposing that the baby, like the sense of trust, it doesn't develop a sense of trust. See, a sense of trust, when you have that, it's a feeling, and it's this feeling, it's like the world is a good place, and man, I belong in it. See, that sense of trust. Because if you don't have a sense of trust, there's two roads, then you have a sense of mistrust. So if you have a sense of mistrust inside of that human being, then later on, you'll see behavioral differences occur. So if I have a sense of mistrust, in other words, the world isn't a good place and I don't belong here, then later on you see wall builders, difficult time in relationships, cannot connect, cannot be intimate. So as we look through these steps, when we start to realize now that maybe trust is an issue. That's the normal state for the human being. See, I thought for a long time trust was abnormal. You're stupid to trust. Where I was raised, that's dumb. When I was drinking, I would never trust no one I didn't drink. Geez, look at the guy. Don't drink. Don't trust him. Right? It's like you don't know what you don't know. So I thought you only trust See? You trust your buds that are drinking. So I thought it was abnormal for a human being to trust. I thought it was stupid if people trusted. But then later on I learned that the fish by its design was designed to swim. The bird was designed to fly. The human being is designed to trust. That is a natural state of the human being. But I didn't know that. See, until a little bit later on. Now, let's just say that like a baby, like they have this thing called TLC. Like a long time ago in Germany, they used to find that most babies put in orphanages died. They'd feed them, change their diapers, but most babies put in orphanages died in the 1800s. So when they started to research that, they found out in Germany there was this orphanage where the babies weren't dying. And so they sent a little team over there. They say, why is that happening? Well, somebody got over there. There was this big German lady, and she had, work there. But she had this system. She'd hang a string of diapers. She'd have this diaper hanging on her shoulder, and she'd have one kid in that little pouch. And this side, she'd have another pouch, see? She'd have a kid hanging in there, and then she'd have one on her back. And they were hanging on her back, 3 of them. So she'd walk around doing her work and cooking, see these babies are just flopping all over her like that. Well, what they found out was that was this simple. Those kids had developed this sense of trust. And so they would continue to live. See, so one of the things we need to know when we come back to this principle, laws, and values, when we start to change our thinking, if I find and I discover, look at my unmanageability, or I get, see, where am I in terms of spirit and intent with that? If I find out I'm a mistrusting person, I have a lot of mistrust, well, then what happens if I go work on that? See, where am I in terms of spirit and intent with that? If I find out I'm a mistrusting person, I have a lot of mistrust, well, then what happens if I go work on that? Because very often we work on symptoms. There's something wrong with me in relationships. I cannot be intimate. I just can't take risk. I got to learn to be a risk taker. But can I be a risk taker if I don't create back within myself a sense of trust? So if I work on a trust, will the risk-taking ability change without me working on it? So I'm working on the right stuff. See, you can, listen, I don't know what I don't know. You can work on the wrong stuff and be working on the symptom and it won't ever change. It was just really a struggle. Now the neat thing about the human being is, if we have missed something in this developmental process, we have the ability to go back and put it back inside of ourselves. See, to be restored to sanity. So we have the ability, if we've missed something, so most of this that we're going through, these developmental stages, is to kind of get from, I don't know what I don't know, to now I know what I don't know. So once I know these things, as I start to work those steps, and you see, I should be able to really accelerate my growth and really grow at a very sound path if I know how the Great Spirit made us, and I work in harmony with getting me back to that system He made, and not invent it. Now let's just say that you have a little baby, say 18 months old, has developed a sense of trust. In other words, they have this feeling, and we've seen some of them, the world is a good place, and man, I belong in it. And then they start walking. Now the adults will call that next stage autonomy, or it also means a sense of independence. So a 2-year-old, when they can start walking, it takes 3 adults full-time, see, working in shifts just to hang with them. See, because they get up there, you start setting them on the ground, and their feet are going like this. They're just waiting for you to let them hit the ground, and they're off. And they're into everything. I mean, they're just into the dirt, and they're tasting this, and taking toast, and dumping it in the milk, and reaching in and squeezing it, and making messes, see? Now, what's the 2 most favorite words of a 2-year-old? No. Now, at that developmental stage, that 2-year-old, it has to develop a sense of independence. So they try to break away from mom and dad. I am my own person now. So you want to do this? No. Well, let me butter this. I'll do it myself. You'll eat this? No. No. See, and it did. A 2-year-old would be a perfect juvenile if they could just drive a car. Right? They just tearing everything up. Now you'll see very often, like say 2 daughters come over to mom's place, each has a 2-year-old, and one of the moms will come over and they take their 2-year-old and they sit him on a chair, and she just sits there, so perfect and so proper. The other sister brings her kid over, and I'm telling you, that little boy just tears grandma's place up. He's into everything, the pots and the pans and exploring and doing all this stuff. And they say to that person, why isn't that one like that good little girl? That good little girl may very well be the one that's not developing mentally healthy. You see, because you're supposed to develop that sense of trust, that sense of that freedom. Because it's at that stage where you start to learn to make choices and decisions. I'll do it myself, thank you. So when you see those little 2-year-olds doing that, you see, when you see them making a choice or a decision, like they draw this weird thing or whatever and they show it to you, ooh, I like how you decided that. You're something. You're good at it. And you see them, you know, they walk on nose up in the air, ooh, I'm good at it. So at that stage, you see, you're supposed to develop that sense of independence. Because if you don't develop that sense, it's a feeling, a sense of being independent, then what will you see later on? Can't make decisions, indecisive, see, wishy-washy, not taking risks, afraid of this, afraid of that. Does that make sense? So when we start to develop ourselves and go through the steps, if we start to come back and take a look at this developmental cycle as we work the steps, and I see I'm having trouble with choice and decisions, I'm having a hard time in relationships, and I can ask myself, do I have this feeling of independence? If not, then maybe I need to go back and do something to bring it back inside of myself so I can have that stage, because that's how the Creator made me. He says, one thing to grow up in my world that I created to be mentally healthy is you must develop a sense of trust. That you belong in this world, it's a natural state for you, you see, and you love being here. And not only that, you function from choice and decisions. See, that you have that ability to do that. On what? Well, that's really handled in a step. Like you see, where is it you function from trust at the level of spirit and intent? Trust in that sense is a decision. If you trust someone too much, that's not trust. Right? That is a different issue than trust. And that's some kind of a fear. We'll get into some of that. Could we just ask that one just a little bit later? Because there's more information that will really help. It's like you cannot... Trust is not a volume. Trust is a decision. So you cannot trust too much. That's called some other things. But not trust. Any other questions or comments on this? The next stage you go through is a stage called initiative. And this happens about ages, or maybe 4 to 7. Now you see little kids, what you'll see them is, all of a sudden they just go from tearing everything up, all of a sudden you see them, they become really pretending type. They have like imaginary friends, pet turtles, and they make you set places for them at the supper table. Sit here in front of a friend and they talk to them just like they're real. And then you'll see them, they do all sorts of weird things. You know, one day they'll have a pan on their head and they pretend to be a policeman. Then the next day they're like a cop. And then the next day they're cowboys and they want all this stuff on them. See, well, it's at that stage they are developing, and so they're saying, I wonder what it's like to be a policeman. See, so they put a pan on their head and they run around blowing sirens and doing that stuff. And the next day, I wonder what it's like to be a cow person, you know, cowboy. So they start shooting like this, so you see, do all this stuff, and you'll see them sometimes, they'll come up like on their, they'll pretend like they're a dog. See, they'll come up, woof, 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 and or bow, wow, bow, wow. And they'll grab your pant leg like that, and they'll sit up and bark like that, and you reach up there, get a cookie, see, make them speak, see, you give them that cookie, pat them on the head, see, kick them in the, See, and help, now it's okay, see, if you're 3, 4, and 5 doing that, but if you got a teenager that's doing that, like barking like a dog, you're really in trouble. You got a sick kid. See, it's really bad, right? So it's at that stage where they are developing now imagination, the ability to vision, creativity skills, so they're developing that. Then you'll see this young person will grow, and they'll come to that next stage of development called industry, or another word for it is sense of accomplishment. So at that stage, these are those pre-teenage years, there's 2 feelings that the human being needs to have. One feeling is, I'm good at something feelings, I'm good for something feelings. We need to have that feeling, I am good at it. Now you'll see, like culturally, we knew who we were. You say, why am I, who am I, where am I going? We always knew. Well, you know him, he's a hunter. You know her, she's the... And that feedback was always to give us that feeling of being good for something, good at something. You see, a lot of teachers are pretty good at it in schools. They have little badges and little happy faces, you know. You go up there, you get your test, you go, ooh, look, you get a blue happy face, see? Man, you're something. See, I'm good at it. So you get those I'm good at it feelings. So you'll see boys clubs or some of our drum groups. You know, what they're doing is they're giving those youth those feelings, I'm good at it, I'm good for something feelings. Because you see, what happens if you don't develop those feelings? It's a polarity system, so I will develop then, I'm not good for nothing feelings. I'm not good at anything feelings.
Excuse me, what age would that be?
8 to 12. That's the pre-teenage years. So if you develop at that age, I'm good for nothing, I'm not good at anything feelings, then later on you'll see behavior. Hey, why don't you go try this? Oh, not me. But I think you can draw, you can... No, I wouldn't be good at it. See, and you even see in body language, they're just not good at anything. You know, those type of feelings. And you'll just see a resistance and can't make decisions and just real withdrawal, see, type of things. So it's at that age, it's very, very important, you see, to develop within the human those 2 feelings. Now let's say I get in recovery and I can examine through the set of steps that I don't have those feelings. The neat thing about the human being is I have the ability to come back and develop them. I need to have those to grow mentally healthy. Now you take a look at how many of us have been raised in dysfunctional families. How many of us have been raised by alcoholic parents like me? How many of us has many of our relatives drinking? How many of us have been told? I mean, did somebody, like when we were growing, did we develop a sense of trust? Or did we have good choices and decisions like 2-year-olds, you see? Where you're supposed to be going, no, oh yes you will, shame on you, bad girl, bad boy, smack, see, slam, kick. Then all of a sudden you don't develop those feelings, that's normally, so as you start to grow up acting a certain way, there must be something wrong with me. Then you start into some of the violence and some of the sexual abuse and some of the other things many of us have experienced. So we start to grow up with no sense of trust, no sense of independence. I am good for nothing, you're good at nothing. Even the input from schools and all these different things, so we start to grow up as native people, growing as dysfunctional families, not having these feelings which the Creator designed for the human being to have. Does that make sense? Yes?
Yeah, you just described one of my second grade classes. A majority of the second grade class that I had show a lot of the signs and symptoms. And, you know, what they're talking about a lot of times is when they're talking about mom and dad, broken promises. And they don't trust. You know, they don't trust. And they're all, you know, they're just second graders.
Yeah. Oh, see.
You know, I can just imagine, you know, like we're doing the best we can. Imagine what it would be like in a couple of years. You know, and a lot of it is because the parents are alcoholics.
Absolutely. But even for us, you know, as native people, alcohol is but a symptom. There's other things that we have to work on. But I think you see a lot of that in our kids. Ourselves grew up that way, many of us. That's the way it was. Now, we just grew up thinking that was normal. I didn't know there was another way, right? It's like my dad would go drinking or whatever. Well, we knew, his patterns really well. And we heard when he come back to the res. We always had like a lot of old cars and stuff out in our backyard. So we'd hide food in there. So when he comes out the back window, you go back to where that food was, we had stuff stashed. See, hoping he wouldn't come find us. And but we weren't the only ones. See, a lot of people did that. That was just the way you did it. It was a real, now, it's a survival thing. But you see, it's just like myself. When I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional family. And when I was in this age here, from age since where I'm supposed to be developing a sense of industry or accomplishment, from a time I was a little before I was 10 years old to a little after I was about 11 and a half, I was sexually molested by an uncle, minimum weekly. So it was also one of the favorite uncles, come from a large family. And that went on all the time. Then one time we went to the res, to a party there, and somebody shot him 6 times. They got a big fight. I was so happy when that happened. But then when I saw how my mom and everybody acted, they were all sad. I had the wrong feeling there. I was glad the son of a bitch got it. See, is how I thought. And I never ever told anybody that ever till I was 33. But then you would see me in relationships. Relationship after relationship after relationship. I built these walls. You see, and I just couldn't let anybody through. And God, I wanted to. Or sometimes you'd see a woman, that would have that insight to get through those walls. I was just giving signals, see. Come on. Back. Come on. Back. And they would say things like, you never let anybody close to you. You oughta. I couldn't do it. It was just a paralysis. So what I do, I just go drink some more. See? So I just go through them, but I could never get a relationship and keep it. I couldn't even tell you how I felt. I didn't recognize feelings. I was 30-some years old. It actually wasn't. In a certain case, about 2 months ago, I was telling Deborah, when you feel like this, what is that called? I'm still discovering them. Before that, I went through a thing where I went through a set of steps and everything. I had a whole bunch of them crop up. I didn't know what that name of that was. I never had that. I had to run around trying to find out what is the name of this thing. When you feel like this, when this thing isn't there, what is it? I didn't know that. But you see, the law is, it doesn't take account whether you are a child or not. It doesn't take account for that. It takes account for whether you live in harmony with it or not. If you are raised out of harmony with it, then your style of life is going to be a certain way. The only catcher is, the human being can change, and I as a human being, it doesn't matter who did what to me. Bottom line, see, is this like what did I really want this relationship with my uncle? After he died and after I started, try to get free of it? What I really wanted is I wanted him to come back to life. Just give me a day with him. That would have done it. Then he could have died and I could have went on, died again. I could have went back and forgiven him. But he didn't come back. So I spend this time, you see, what's wrong with me? I must have done something wrong and dwelled in that forever. See, really was impactful. Even though I kept it hid, it touched every area of my life. There was no area of my life wasn't touched. Job, relationships with children, relationships, every place was because of that issue, but I couldn't bring that up. So I hung on to it. But then you would take a look at me. My sister used to call me on guard. She said it in our language, but it meant on guard. See, I could never sit with my back to the wall. And I always knew where the doors were. See, even at the supper table, we'd eat. I couldn't sit in the middle because we had a large family, like a table. I could never sit in the middle. I had to sit on the end. I couldn't do it. See, and I just eat, never said nothing. Always watching. See, and a lot of those things you see that's happened, like your dad will come up and say, I'm going to ask you the truth I'm going to ask you. One time tell me the truth. You tell him the truth, bam, right across the room. So pretty soon you learn, you're going to get it anyway, just say nothing. Right? Don't say nothing. So see, then you start to grow up that way, and then you become very silent. So then, now do you not say nothing to him? You take no risk. You tell nobody nothing, unless you want them to know it. Or you might tell them something, you see, to use or to manipulate. But you don't tell them anything. Because if you do, you see, you're going to get it. Does that make sense? Now, you just take, once we come to the stage of identity, and these are the teenage years. See, at the stage of identity, this is a very, very critical stage for the human being. This is the first time in the life that a human being will consciously seek the answer to those three questions. Teenagers do. Why am I? Who am I? And where am I going? And that's why you see them doing all those weird things. Geez, one day their hair is green and they wear these kind of suits, and see, a week later they're dressed like this, they like this kind of music. So at that identity stage, the human being must have this feeling, the feeling of belonging. It has to belong. It's a feeling that it seeks. So you'll see them clusters, they get little groups. Right? They find out mom and dad, what kind of music do you like? Country and Western. They like rap, see. You're out, see, we're in. So they start to develop, you see, this identity. And you see them doing a lot of weird stuff from an adult's point of view. They're just really weird. But they're seeking out, that's why gangs are so effective. See, in our culture, it wasn't that difficult to get an identity because we hunted, see, we fished, we cured, we tanned, we did all these things. But you take these modern times, hell, you don't need to hunt, you don't need to cook. See, when are you one? When I get my driver's license? Geez, I can't wait. 16, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. And then what's next? Well, drinking, say 18. Well, I can't wait to get there so I can be one. So we end up with our identity, with a heart. See, that's why gangs work so well, if you think about it. See, it's very hard to be somebody. You take native people, come into a big urban society. If we don't have, good like drum groups and powwows and that kind of stuff where people can start to develop that, gangs always fill that need of belonging. You know him, he's the Lord. You know her, she's the. You see? So gangs are very, very effective. Now what will happen, say as we grow up and we don't get an identity, later on, maybe in the late 30s, you will see very funny behavior among, like men, for example. You see a lot of alcoholism, suicide, a lot of depression. You see a lot of them will dump their wives about that age, and they go back and they try to find one 17, 18, 19, see, 20. Real young ones. And you'll see them, they'll even dress funny. They'll like roll their cigarettes up in their T-shirts again, you know how they used to do, Lucky Strikes or whatever. They roll them up in there, and they dress in green hats and purple pants and pink socks, and you see them coming to a party. Smack open the door, run to the middle of the living room, jump up on top of the coffee table, and they make the announcement. I'm here, the party can begin. See, the kids here, see, acting like a teenager, trying to recreate the past. And so we'll see that type of behavior happen later on. Then we get the stage of identity, like in the late, maybe 19, 20 years old, if we're growing up normally. So it's at that stage we're supposed to be searching, trying new things, finding the answer to those three questions. Who am I? Why am I? And where am I going? So once you get, yes?
You're talking about men act that way. Do you know how women go back that way if they don't develop the identity properly?
Same way. You'll see a lot of different behaviors in women also doing that.
Yeah, Don, one of the things that you touched on that was real important to me about my recovery is like all the time I was sedated, you know, I always, you know, like, I'm catching up. And like, you know, like somebody, I'm criticized sometimes because, you know, they might say that I'm having like pre-adolescent, childlike, or adolescent behavior. So that's natural for me because I know where I'm coming from. But one of the things that you don't hear a whole lot of dialogue about is men trying to catch up emotionally, let alone women. And a lot of the times when I see it, you know, you might hear somebody share at a meeting that you might have known for a long time, and they're starting to identify it because we're able to read between the lines a little bit. But it's not talked about openly.
Oh, no.
You know, and I've heard very few women talk about trying to catch up. Like for me, like I was a stone-blown alcoholic when I was 15, and like now, probably, maybe I was about 19 or 20. And one of the things that's been exciting for me is because I was sedated, like during those real important years, like when you date, it means a lot to me now. Like it's even like basically just holding hands, something like that. It means a lot to me, whereas I see a lot of other people, young or old or adults, take it for granted. And see, with me and my development, I don't take anything for granted anymore. It means a lot to me. But like I said, you don't hear a whole lot of dialogue on it. And I think it's real important that we as men and women should start talking about and start getting into, you know. And I don't know, I'm just excited for myself because, you know, I'm not worried about whether I catch up or not, but it's just being able to identify what I've lost and just kind of holding on to it and just going through my own pace.
Well, you know, there's more and more Native people are getting longer-term recovery than we've ever had before and in larger numbers. But one of the things we're finding in a lot of communities we work in recovery, people are stuck. There's like a level you get to, and it's like, so, like what next? You know, and I think we need to start sharing some of that new stuff everyone is working in. But once again, you think like you're the only one who has it.
Yeah, because I had a birthday on the 21st, and since the 21st, I've been kind of like going through a renewal stage. So like it's a real exciting time for me, and I kind of almost feel like I'm in my first year of sobriety.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, that means a lot to me, you know. But more importantly, I've been able to share that with other people, which is real exciting, and they understand.
Sure. Did we answer your question about women's behavior?
Well, I don't know, in my experience, when I reached that point where I'm supposed to have identity, I was abused, and I shut off. I turned off, and I stayed turned off for many years, and then I turned to alcohol.
Uh-huh.
And many of my sisters had babies. Mama was saying had babies at that time. You know, I had a clinic, so I didn't have babies. But for me, I don't recognize what I missed in that development. So I wouldn't even recognize if I were back into it. Because maybe for men, getting up and partying and having sex and going to women is natural for them in that period. But for us to do that is aberrant behavior. Because 14 to 17, women shouldn't be doing that. So we aren't really going through our adolescence again when we're doing that. We're punishing ourselves.
Right.
So it is a totally different experience for us. But I don't know what that experience is. I don't know if they even have...
Deborah?
Yeah.
I'd like to say something, but I don't want to insult any of the elders in this room. I love my parents very much, but they were not well. My father is an alcoholic, and my mom is an alcoholic as well. And their behavior at they're 50 and 70 years old is exactly like it was when they were teenagers. Yeah. She's got the same hairstyle she had when she was a teenager. He's got the same hairstyle he had when he was a teenager. Their bodies today, but mentally and emotionally, they have not changed. They have raised 11 children, and most of my brothers and sisters are either alcoholics or drug addicts, and some are in prison. Throughout the whole time I was growing up, the same scenario played over and over and over again. You know, he would break her arm and she would run away and they would get back together. But they were locked in this game with each other. And they're 60 and 70 years old and that game still takes place. And they can't see that they're locked in it. They're not well, but they progress physically. They got old physically. Their bodies are old. Their behavior is that of a teenager. And women behave that way just like men do. And I don't think necessarily that they see it, and I don't think necessarily that they do it intentionally. When we're in some of the communities, Indian communities all across the country, what I see, which must be incredibly frustrating for somebody that's 16 or 17 years old, is I see those 16 and 17-year-olds trying to figure out what they're supposed to be as an adult and what they're looking at or experiencing in the whole community is a bunch of teenagers in old bodies. And they're having a real hard time. They get real rebellious, and it must be scary. If I think about it, I had no idea. I don't know how to resolve conflict. You hit or you run. You know, you are the aggressor or you run away. Those are your two choices. I'm 41 years old, and I'm just figuring out now, you know, how you get to the other side of conflict. And there can be, everybody can have their own opinion and not be wrong. I'm just learning that. You don't understand that intimacy. And when you're 16 and 17, and you're starting to come into adulthood, how do you know what's an adult if you've never seen it or experienced it? You have no idea. And I don't know about you guys, but I have these aunts, and I love them dearly. And Dawn has the same set of aunts that everyone knows that there's that little curly hair on the top and it's long and straight and curly on the bottom. That's the style of the 50s, and it's dyed jet black. And it's like they've got stuck in that era. And I'm not saying this to insult them. I'm just saying I don't think they even see it. And it's like we can't give our children to that next stage if we don't grow up as adults. If we don't go back and repair that thing, our kids don't know how to do it. They don't know how to do it. It's our responsibility to show that.
You know, some of the lines of what you're talking about, like when I was growing up, you know, I'm 45 and I look around and I ask questions to other people my age. Well, I felt 45 when I was in the 5th grade. You know, I was ready to retire with all that responsibility that I had, you know, with a job, taking care of, you know, 7 sisters and 3 brothers. My dad always out looking for my mom, me taking care of my mother. You know, I was an old man. You know, when I got into junior high school, I was ready to go out some pastures. I really was, you know.
I was the hero too in my family.
Yeah.
The only one to graduate high school, the only one to go to college. And you do that. And I was my mother's mother, and I was my father's mother, and I took care of everyone. And I'm not saying I'm anywhere near well. I'm saying I'm still learning to. And for those girls in the family who fall with responsibility, kind of lighten up and be a child or a child.
You see, that's one of the things I appreciate when I'm writing, when I'm starting to lighten up. But the important thing to me is to be able to recognize a lot of things and accept them for what they are. But I'm putting myself, you know.
All right, up front here.
From a woman's point of view, I knew exactly what he was talking about when he put his cigarettes in his sleeve. Actually, because I did that. And went to the party and said, jumped on the coffee table and said, I'm here. Well, I didn't hear that he went to a party chasing women or anything like that kind of thing. It was more of a personhood type thing, and identifying myself in some way and then expecting you to recognize and accept me and evolve on me when I got there. Sometimes if you don't recognize your stage, it's possible to take these issues have to be resolved because and time and you do not recognize it's like if you're in a stress and you can't relate to it, maybe you can go back up and bring for it, that kind of thing. You know, maybe it's something else that's not I would think around the molestation issue is a lot of autonomy. Having your own body and being able to say, no, this is what this body is supposed to do, and not having done it, and not being allowed to take that place of work. That doesn't stop listening.
I was talking to Sue Elder yesterday, day before yesterday, and I asked her, I says, what is shame? You know, looking at it from a culture point of view. And she sat there for a long time, and she come back and she says, shame is the deepest wound that a human being can experience. Shame is of all of them, that is the deepest one. And I just thought about that, because that's a lot, you know, of what we have, many of us, how we have been raised. Those are the types of things we need to work in the recovery process, is to find a lot of that, because it's inside of ourselves. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about too, about, you know, when you're talking about the man and how he's dressed. I went through this, you know, in recovery. I went through this. I'm not alcoholic. I'm an Al-Anon. But what I found myself doing in recovery after I'd been in a while was that I realized that I never honored my femininity. You know, it's like growing up as a teenager. I mean, I looked nice, curl my hair, you know, did the makeup. But then, always growing up with responsibility, I was also that 45-year-old woman,
Sure.
which is exactly what my mother did. My mother, like, never went through adolescence. It was like immediately she was this 45-year-old woman. Having had a child at 17, I was ready to be that 45-year-old woman. And so what ended up happening was that I gained a lot of weight, you know, 35, 40 pounds, no longer had that picture of femininity. You know, it was like I was just this big thing. No feminine, no masculine, just a being, you know, like, because I was afraid. I was afraid of being attractive, because what happens? What if you are? What if you have to deal with all the feelings?
That's right.
And saying no, exactly what you were talking about. So what I ended up doing in recovery, once I lost some of that weight, was that I started to dress and to act inappropriately. You know, wearing clothes that didn't really, it looks great on a young teenager. I mean, how many times do you walk down the street and you see, you know, women who are in their 40s or something, and it's like, you go, why is she dressed like that? You know, it's like, that doesn't look great on her teenage daughter. And I did all that stuff. I did that, trying to reclaim that part of me that I lost. When I'm a 40-year-old woman, you know, in a 12-year-old body.
Sure. Jerry?
I think, Jerry, I'm an alcoholic. Hear a lot of things in here that are really good, and it's really important that we ask these questions, and also that we take back to people we sponsor some of the solutions that we hear in here. I believe a number of us, because we grew up in dysfunctional families, are stuck in the survival mode, because that's how we grew up, and it's the only way we know. And so for me, getting into recovery and trying to do some of the recovery steps, I always go back to that. And a lot of times I catch myself doing it, not that it's even justified, it's just a snap reaction. And so for me, sharing with other alcoholics and being involved in something like this is really important, because it gives me an opportunity to listen to how other Indian people, how we survive in the world. You know, and actually after survival we've come to live, and I'm right at that point. I'm learning to trust, just barely learning to trust. I'm 8 years sober, and I'm just now developing a sense of trust in non-Indian people. It's taken a long time. And I think that search for identity that comes with adolescence is something that I'm just not getting in touch with. And so it's important that as alcoholics we continue to work the steps of recovery, especially into the inventories. Because it's in the inventories, I believe, that we begin to find some of those issues that keep us from becoming the people we can be.
Okay. Thanks, Jerry.
I just had a question on that medicine wheel that, you know, for the areas of
development. It sounds, or it seems to me like when kids grew up in the 50s in BIA school, that is probably added to, the child not fully developing. And a lot of those people who were educated in BIA school are now parents or grandparents, and it sounds like that adds to dysfunction.
Well, one of the things is that you touched on is really critical for us to look at as Native people. In part of recovery, and we find in this is really critical for many of the tribes and us as individuals. And there was this one point, I was, when I come in get sober, I was very angry. I mean, almost violent. That's the only thing I knew. So as I worked through that, there was this one thing. There were certain things, if I would just hear about the story, like the walk of our people, or I would hear about other thing happens to other Indians, a long time ago, I get very rageful. I mean, just get really pissed about it. And I say, look, then was then, now is now. What's the matter with you? But one of the things we, like when we work in the communities that we find is very important for us to look at in recovery is this intergenerational healing. And that means this. When they started a long time ago, the boarding schools, some of the Indian schools, that was really initiated by the Department of War. And it was a strategy to assimilate Native people back into dominant culture. And that's documented. That's not like a secret. But when they grew up, and they, all the ways that they got the kids into the schools, the ones that they got in there, which was a large portion of the children then, but they were successful in that they taught them, hey, being Indian, don't speak your language, don't speak your culture, see, don't do no ceremonies, don't do this. And they grew up being quite successful, for the most part. Then what do you happen when those kids got married? And how did they raise their children? Hate being Indian, don't speak your language, the culture is bad. Then they have a grown up and then they raise children. We work with youth right now that have not attended boarding school, and they have boarding school behavior. You can recognize it, the way that they talk. And the way that they are punished by their parents is the way boarding school was punished 3 and 4 generations ago. They make them kneel on things. They do the same thing to them. So sometimes today, we don't know why. I mean, there's some level sometimes that is just like when I started going back to the culture. My mom was raised in boarding school. So I started to want to relearn the language and letting my hair grow long again. Made her mad. She said, why are you letting your hair grow like that? That's stupid. And don't be speaking that language around here. I don't want to be hearing that here. And I started to see that I grew up that way. There's some things happen in boarding school directly affects us even as recovery people. I talked to an elder in our, because I've been interested in this boarding school, so I'm starting to understand I have boarding school behavior in part of my recovery. I have to look at, I'm not trying to blame anyone. See, I'm fully accountable for my growth. It doesn't matter, my uncle molested me, that happens. But I'm accountable to change myself because I want to be happy. But I talked to this elder, he said, he's an uncle of mine. But he said we went to mission school. First day they got there at night, they put them all, in class, or, to bed and everything. But they brought him over the next morning, and a priest brought him into the school, and he said, I want to have a talk with you all about your behavior and about how I want you to mind me. So he talked to him, the elder said, then he took him downstairs, they have a furnace there. And he talked to them about doing exactly what he said. He didn't want to be, But then what he did was he had all his kids line in front of this furnace, and he reached in this box. He took a lid off that box. He pulled out a cat, and he opened up that door, and he just threw that cat in the furnace alive and shut that door. And this elder, he's 87, just broke down and cried. That type of hurts. A lot of us are raised by people have experienced many, many things like that. And when we look at getting in recovery, where do we get stuck? That's the things we got to start looking at. You know, when they start to surface, to understand there's other things intergenerationally that has affected us. There's a lot of sexual molestation went on in the boarding schools. Nobody wants to say that. But sometimes we're working with some elders, they'll tell you what went on there, and it wasn't pleasant. There was people, women, we know some, is early 40s, younger than me, that were sterilized when they were in boarding school, with no medicine, no nothing. They held them down on tables. That went on. That wasn't like in the 1800s. They're now healing and processing that kind of stuff. So I think part of recovery is to look at intergenerational stuff also, because many of us it's like, I started to understand why my parents were like they were. It was just all of a sudden my relationship with them changed, because I didn't know. It was like, you don't know what you don't know. I said, how could an Indian parent tell their children to don't be Indian, don't be speaking your language, don't go back to the culture, it's bad, leave it alone, don't go that way. Now I understand. So before, I couldn't understand. Does that make sense? And those are the things, like when we are in recovery a longer periods, we need to start even looking at that and see what is that effects on us. Because even some of the children now, that's still happening today in many other schools. How many here was to boarding school, just out of curiosity? I see quite a few. All right. So,
I heard you say something about that cycle in the trust. I'm in a confusing area right now, and I'm a single parent. I've had my kid ever since he was 3 days old on my own, and I'm doing the best I can to raise him. And coming from an alcoholic family, and my father in recovery, you know, and I see his. You know, it makes sense what you said about just different changes. Maybe my father's in one area and I'm in another. Because when we connect, we explode, you know. And I see myself taking those same things home with me when I go home. And I see myself reacting to my kids sometimes like that. Sometimes it's kind of hard to you know, I heard what Al was saying about trust. You know, and it's like, how do you, I'm confused about what are you supposed to do when you're telling something and then you can't do it because we have other responsibilities. I mean, it's like, you know, I clean my own house, my own laundry, you know, and he's a very big house, you know, and then tell him, well, we'll go ride bikes, and then, you know, and then I not have the time, and I'm pumped, I'm broke down and tired. You know, what do you do in situations like that? You know, I'm not here to hurt my kids. I have no intention to hurt my kids. And I don't know how to balance that. You know, when you see the same thing still 28 years old, 29 years old, you know, and I see those same things with my dad telling me something, and then, you know, it changed. And I can't figure out the balance with it. And I don't know how to. I have no idea about it.
well, when we get into the steps this afternoon, into the workshops, we'll be looking at a lot of that. Because I think when you start to look at understanding the interconnectedness and a lot of the thing about the steps, I think that a person has the ability to really look forward to the steps as an interconnected system that allows each individual to really accelerate growth. It isn't about wallowing in it forever. And it's about learning, you know, where to focus. It's sort of like you can't fix that which you don't know is broke. And very often we focus so much on a couple of things we think we're all screwed up. You know, it's like your car doesn't run, you take it to the garage, you say, your car's all messed up, it's all broke, God, it's going to cost me millions to do it. You take it there, first thing has to be done is to identify where it's broke. Carburetor needs to be adjusted, brakes need to be fixed, you got a flat tire. We do those three things, it can start running. But we say, oh, everything is broke. But we're not as broke as we would like to think that we are. But it's a matter of locating that right place. And then learning to use tools on focus. And to live a balanced life. The Creator made a harmonious system because we were alcoholic, whatever, went out and did some stuff. It doesn't mean I have to wait for 15 years before I can have a harmonious life. It's to the degree that I come back and work with the principal laws and values, and then it starts to happen. Right? So we'll take a look at that part of the steps this afternoon on how to identify things quickly and make adjustments and not tear ourselves up in the process of recovering.
You know, I think one of the most important things that all of us go through, like Sam, you know, like a key issue right now, he's able to identify if there's something that possibly wrong, and he's able to dialogue it and willing to do something about it. Like even for myself, you know, being in recovery, like I enjoy being a parent, and I want to always be a good parent. And whenever I see anything free for parenting classes, I go, you know, and I learn. And then I take it and I try it out, and it doesn't work, and I look for another workshop or ask a friend of mine. But you know, it works. You know, but I think he's on the right track because he's just able to identify it right now. And it sounds to me like he's willing to work on it. We talk about it.
Yes.
Well, for me, the best thing I've ever done was I got involved in allocating, and that's where I learned what, closer to normal, what I should have felt. For me, it took, the lesson first was not turning back to God and AA. And then about a year later, getting into adult children's alcoholics and accepting that and all that. And 5 years ago, on October 11th, I woke up to a new world. I was raised in the wisdom of the girl, and I was living in the wisdom of the soul today. And I've never seen it free the way it is. No record, no music, no tape, not one person, nothing besides her. Familiar to it, whatsoever. But I had Al-Anon for support, and did for a fourth and fifth step twice in 2 years. I got to the first person, and then when I got into Albuquerque by all those kids, none of them were kids. Like I had brain concussion for free from my dad, and then my granddad a week later in the military himself. And then I got these to the harness off of Belgian workhorse, hit full strength, and my dad was stronger than harness, and he never ever hit me again. I was out for a long time that time, but it's been hell. But the kids, they taught me. I needed to learn what a kid 4, 5, 6, 7 needs to know, and I learned it from them.
Mm-hmm.
All the kids knew more than I did. Thanks.
Okay. Looking at these developmental stages, they trigger a lot of good things, but we're really just trying to set up to do that. This afternoon we'll learn mind mapping, how to trigger more. We're going to workshop in groups, capitalizing one another's experiences where that's appropriate for us to share something. But we'd like to finish these stages because I think they are very, very important yet. When we get to our age of our late teens, like 19, 20, that's the first time that it's sort of like, it's at that point we can walk off the stage of life, like pretty much just like, before then we've been acting, trying to figure all this stuff out. But once we get our identity, we know why we are, who we are, and where we're going. It's like you can get off that stage finally, like when you're 20, and you say like, I now know who I am, I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses, I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses, and if you don't like it, stuff it. Right? It's like you get off that stage of life. You're just not around like people pleasing. But then next we will go to this stage of intimacy, and that still happens between maybe the 20s to 30s or so. And it's at that age a human being needs to develop the ability to share their feelings. It's about building relationships. I need to be able to tell you my opinion whether you agree with me or not. See, I need to be able to share that. And you see like college students, you ever notice they're sitting at the student union, whatever, they just talk, and they come home from school and they have opinions on everything. They know the government should run, this is screwed up, that's bad, tribal councils like this, geez, who hired that one? Look at that jerk. And they just have opinions on everything, when they're in that. Now you'll see them even talking to one another. You'll see one talking, the other one's listening. You ever notice that other one's not listening? They're thinking the up-one'smanship story, just waiting for them to get done. See, then they go back and they you think your mother was bad? Let me tell you about my mother, how bad she was, see? So they start to switch stories back and forth. Now you see, these things are like building. So let's just say that I am in this age of, or as a human being in relationships. Do you think I have the ability to be intimate in relationships if I don't know who I am? Do you think I have the ability to be effective in relationships if I cannot trust? Do you think I have the ability to be intimate in relationships if I don't have these feelings about myself? I'm good at something, I'm good for something feelings? See, but I have the ability to come back in areas where I'm off, I can rebuild myself. So a lot of times if I have having issues in relationships, I got to take a look at the steps. There's other key things I need to notice. When I look at unmanageability, or I'm writing inventory, I'm looking for these patterns. I need to be able to see these patterns, you see where I'm off track. Then knowing and working step 10 and 11 is where I go and rebuild myself back so I get that right away. We don't need, to wallow in it forever. Because very often, if we don't know these things, so if I have issues in relationships, the relationship is not the issue. There's something I need to look at inside of myself. So how do I go find that so I can change that? So as I come back and I can discover what that is, then you'll see relationships will improve. But when I get through this intimacy, then I go to this age of generativity. And this might be, 40 to 50s. And that generativity is then the need for the human being to do something for others. I have to be a giving person. You see, a lot of people will just be involved in volunteer work and they do all sorts of stuff just free. In other words, they do it not for credit or glory or to get something back. They just do it because they have to do it. It just makes them feel good. So you see, a lot of times it's at that point where prior to that we're takers, but we'll get to that age of generativity, then all of a sudden we got to go and do something for some. You just got to do it. See, in order to be happy. Then we enter the age of the elders, the stage of integrity. That stage of integrity of the elders, that's at that point, if you notice, if you ever watch elders that have integrity, see, you just kind of see a worthwhileness to all things. When you go there, you're like a mouse just wound up on this little thing, and they just sit there and they just kind of see it all connected, even the conflict. Right? They just see a worthwhileness to all things. Usually when you have integrity, or you're at that stage of the elder, by then you have developed your own set of codes by which you live your life. Like when we were younger, a lot of times, you ever notice, if you're honest, the real reason we don't do things is because I might get caught, and that's the reason I don't do them. Right? If I knew I wouldn't get caught, I'd give it a go. But I better not because I might get caught. But see, the elders, they've gotten past that. They just do it because it's not right for them. They seem to have a philosophy that it's okay to be who you are. You don't have to be like how they think to be okay. It's okay to be young. It's okay to be a breed. It's okay to be white and this. It's okay to, right? It's okay to be man. It's okay to be work. It's okay not to work. You don't see them well, what is your amount of blood? Are you a traditional or you are an urban one that you don't know nothing about here? They don't spend this time getting things in buckets and categories and all that. It's okay. If you're Indian this much, you're Indian, and you're all right. You don't see them getting all hung up, you see, like we are sometimes. So what I thought I would do is just kind of show that those developmental stages before we take a look at the steps, so we have a form of reference that when we start to look at unmanageability and we start to look at those, that we're looking at the Creator did make a path for the human being to grow mentally healthy. Many of us did not have the opportunity to do that. So it's not mom's fault, it's not dad's fault, it's not the way I was born's fault, right? The issue is I am accountable to correct my life. It doesn't matter who did it. And later on this afternoon we'll also talk about the ability to forgive the unforgivable. But there's certain things sometimes that we need to do if I want to have the style of life that sobriety has to offer. Sobriety is just not about not drinking. It's about another whole style of us coming back to all those things that is available to us in our culture. And it's about living. So we'll talk about those things. Did we only get those lights? Because you see, if we take a look at, very often when we are measuring things, we're always looking at results. You ever ask yourself, where do results come from? Every result will be preceded by an action. Cannot be no other way. The Creator made everything to run by a system of laws. So then you say, well, where do actions come from? You ever notice? You got to think them. They don't just magically appear. So if I think a certain thing, it causes an action, shows a result in my life. Well, where does thinking come from? Well, it comes from here, the human being. Basically, the human being is 98% of everything that we do is run by 8 thought patterns. It's not like it's all as complicated as we think. There's just thought patterns we do and we just repeat them. Then we say, what is it that drives the being? It's our will, our free will. The Creator designed us to function from free will. And what is it that drives our will? Our spirit and intent. So we want to change the results. See, there's this definition of insanity. It says you can't keep thinking what you're thinking and doing what you're doing and expect different results. Right? If you want different results, there's something that has to change that result. And that's how we'll be looking at the steps from an Indian point of view. All right. Any comments? All right. So when we come back from our lunch, we're going to take this and apply it to the 12 steps to see how does all these concepts fit into the 12 steps. So we're starting at let's start at 1:02. 2 minutes after 1. 2 minutes after 1. 1:02. We'll start. Go on to the next step, and I think there was one important thing. I used my own experience when I first got into looking at doing the steps, and I talked to a sponsor about that, was remember in this one diagram here, we talked about that flow of results. And what it says there basically is that the human being, it never does anything unless the will says it's okay. So everything always has to pass through the will. I will do this or I will not do this. Then, depending upon which way I go, then the results go. And the reason for that is that the Creator designed us to function from free will, and that if we do anything other than a free will, then we are designed to push back or not do it. So if I could just pick on you, if I have you put your hand on mine, if you would. If you notice, as soon as I push without saying a word, it pushes back. But if I ask, could I push your hand, then you get cooperation. Now that's physically. We are designed that anytime anyone pushes us, we push back. Well, it's also designed, we are designed mentally to push back anytime something is against our will. You're supposed to. See, true motivation to get the full force, the first full motivation, is always when we do something on a want to, choose to, like it, love it. I want to do that. See, I choose to do the steps. I love to do them. I want to walk the red road. But as soon as the mind hears I have to, it has a little mechanism that wakes up and says, oh, no, you don't. I'll get you out of it. So it very creatively kicks in a system to have you go do something else. You get procrastination. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow. See, so this voice, in a sense, this force starts to kick in to get us to not do it. So we always function at that level of the free will. So what I'm saying there is that really applies a lot when you come to working steps. Why are you working steps? Well, I have to so I don't get drunk. Not. See, that little voice wakes up and says, no, you don't. See, I'll get you out of it. So what we're saying is, if you're telling yourself you have to work the step because my sponsor says I have to, that little thing wakes up and says, I'll get you out of it. So it starts all these little plans to divert you to do something else. Now, there are no have-tos in the whole world except one. See, you don't have to work steps to stay sober. There are thousands of people in AA staying sober and they never worked a lick of steps in their lives. Now, they're miserable as shit. Now, that's true. You see, the only catcher is you make the choice, you have to take the consequence. So, like getting sober or whatever, it's sort of like a banquet. On that banquet, as many things are available. Steak, lobster, right? Buffalo T-bone, whatever. But then it works its way down to meatloaf and to cheeseburgers, and on this end's peanut butter. So if you want peanut butter sobriety, see, then you don't get steak by not working steps. You can get peanut butter sobriety, but the only problem with that, see, peanut butter always sticks to the roof of your mouth, you know. Love my sobriety. Okay. So what I'm saying is, in looking at the steps, if you were saying you have to do it, don't do it because you won't anyway. Right? Not only you, but you have a mental resistance because it's designed, we're only designed to function from free will. So the only catcher is there are no have-tos really in the whole world except one, is we have to die. But pretty much everything else is a matter of choice. So you don't have to pay taxes. See, don't pay them. Now there's a catcher. There's always a consequence for every choice. You don't pay taxes, you end up in jail. Well, that's true. But you do not have to pay taxes. Now you get in jail, you can get out of jail in one day, or maybe two at the most. If you're in jail, you want to get out, hang yourself. So you'd be out in a pine box. That's true. But I don't want to, die. Well then, shut up and pay your taxes. See, but do it on a want to, choose to, like it, love it. So I think it's important for a person to think just a little bit about that in terms of steps. You do not have to work steps to stay sober. Honest to God, you don't. Don't do it. But there's a consequence for that. But if you want to be free, want the freedom, you want the promises, you want whatever that is, then steps will get you that. So if you want that, then do it on a want to, choose to, like it, love it. Not because you have to, because you don't. A lot of people stay sober and never work steps. But they never taste the honey either. Right? So this is about tasting the honey of life. So I think it's very, very important to take a look at deciding. See, what works in the decisions is I choose to do this. I want to do this. So then you align all the powers of will, and you don't have that little resistance thing. You know, if you ever notice when you tell yourself you have to do something, you ever notice that you very creatively go do something else? And you say, geez, I intended to do that. I have to do this today or else. And then it seems like we never end up doing it. So I think it's important to come to terms with that. You're going to work the steps, do them because you want to, because you really won't anyway. If you tell yourself you have to do them, you won't.
Thank you for listening to Sober Sunrise. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give it a thumbs up as it will help share the message. Until next time, have a great day.